in Line podcast, where we are helping to prepare you for whatever is next in line. As always, I am your host, Chance Pitts, and I'd like to thank you for tuning into this episode. Guys and gals, welcome into another episode of the Next in Line podcast. Super excited to have you here. Also super excited for the guest that we have today. It's my good friend, Mr. Lane Divin. We have a great conversation coming up with a lot of impactful information, talking about his personal development journey and how he has gotten to the point that he has in his life, just with his overall mentality, his physique, all the good things he's got going for him, even professionally as well. But guys, before we get into that, I want to make sure we take care of the housekeeping. If you receive value from this episode or any other episode, I would ask that you share the show with like-minded individuals who might be able to receive that same kind of value. That's going to be the number one way for us to grow and reach more people and, in effect, help more people. Additionally, you can help us out by leaving a rating or review, a like, or a comment on whatever platform you find yourself listening on. That's going to help us pop up a little bit earlier in the search bar when people look for self-help or personal development. Again, help us reach more people and help more people. Guys, also keep up with all the shenanigans and crazy stuff we got going on Facebook, Instagram, and TikTok. That's at Next in Line Development on all of those social media platforms. But guys, with that housekeeping out of the way, let's go ahead and dive into the conversation today. I know it's a good one. I know you're going to enjoy this, so make sure you stick around. There's some great wisdom at the end as well. Guys, without further ado, here's Lane Divin. All right, guys, thank y'all for tuning into this episode of the Next in Line podcast. Today, I am here in Richmond, Texas with Lane Divin. Lane, thanks for being on the podcast today, coming on and sharing a little bit about yourself and about your story and kind of the things that you're learning as you go through your own development process as well. So welcome to the show.
Man, I'm happy to be here and happy to have y'all here with us too, man. So.
Man, that means a lot. It means a lot that y'all open y'all's house to us. Y'all also did the same thing for Brazos Bend 50 at the 100K that we ran, and y'all ran the 10K as well with us. Then acted as a kind of a crew and pacers in a way and helped us through that as well. And then I know y'all have plans to help us out with the Habanero 100 coming up in Cat Spring.
Absolutely. Man, I'm really looking forward to that one. It's going to be a good time out there.
It's going to be good, man. It's going to be a big test. It's going to be hot. It's going to be nasty, but I think it's going to be something that's going to be really cool to try to take on and see if I got what it takes to do it. You know
Absolutely.
what I mean?
No, dude. Shoot, man. It's a good challenge, and I'm excited to see where it takes you and how you come out the other side of that. So,
man, you and I both. I'm very interested to see where it goes and how everything shakes out. But as y'all can see, I kind of just pop into people's houses down here, hang up the flag, stick a microphone in front of their face, and bring them onto the podcast to let y'all connect with good people that have good stories and who have actively made progress towards making themselves better. And, man, I really just want to start out by talking about where we first met, how our relationship formed. Do you want to take the head on that one? The good old days at Brazos Bend Ranch.
Good old BBR cattle, man.
BBR cattle.
That was what, back in 2017, I think, right?
I think so, because I think I started out there in, 2015, and I was a foreman by the time
I joined, yeah. No, it was back in 2017, man. Oh, we've come a long way since then.
We've come a real long way, man, since working all them cows, sitting in a tractor, running all over that place down there. Lane moved in with me. He was in the internship program that we had out there on the ranch.
Yes, sir.
Like I said, I was a foreman. We had a guy named Scotty that was managing the place at the time. It was a really cool dynamic we had out there. We got a lot of young guys that understood the process and just really wanted to dive into the agriculture side of things. A huge part of our lives, still is.
Absolutely.
And we'll talk about that a little bit more as well in depth. But I think at the time, kind of general responsibilities of what we had going on out there was it was a 3,000 acre ranch ish.
I think like 3,500, wasn't it?
3,500, somewhere around there.
Yeah,
right on the river in Rosebud, about an hour north from College Station. Like I said, Lane moved in with me. He was my roommate up there. And that's actually where you met your fiance, which is kind of funny how that worked out. Kendall, your fiance, grew up with my wife, Lane, in Divine.
Man, it's just one of those things, just kind of like kind of the luck of it, man. Because I don't think she was even supposed to come up that weekend. and then it's Lane's birthday, I guess, right?
Yeah,
I think it's Lane's birthday, and then Kendall happened to get off, and it's kind of luck of the draw. So very blessed for that one.
It's kind of wild how it works out, man.
Absolutely, man. And I mean, it's always going to work out how it's supposed to.
Exactly. Things that are meant to be are going to work out the way they're supposed to. That's a huge theme throughout my life, and something that y'all have seen as well, for sure. So it's really cool to have that dynamic, and then also the fact that me and you grew close through that job, and then
yes, sir.
Kendall and Lane both being very close together, growing up together, and all of that. So it was a really cool dynamic for us to all end up in the same place together. And now, man, recently engaged. What's that like? What's it like going through the process? Does anything feel different?
Man, I guess we're coming up on a year of engagement, and it's been exciting. So I know that we got a bunch of wedding planning going on and a lot of stuff to figure out. But I mean, just like anything else, just continuing to try and strive to develop, our relationship and try and just be the best we can for each other. So.
No, absolutely. I think that's something that people stop doing at some points, is they stop really trying to develop it and take their relationship to a new place and learn and grow together as you get used to each other and as you move through that process. It just seems kind of slow, I guess, in some ways. As you move on, you get used to it, you get comfortable, complacent, and you tend to step away from that place of growth. So it's important to make sure you continue to try to foster that relationship and move forward. And
absolutely, man. And I mean, especially those times where it gets hard and kind of boring, as some people may put it. Like that's the time that you need to step in and put even more effort, just like you do in anything else. It's pretty critical that you do that. So.
No, absolutely. Man, one thing, shifting gears a little bit on you from that, we talked about being out on the ranch and working together out there and living and developing, and agriculture has been a huge part of your life, and it's been a part of my life as well. Both of us are basically agricultural science or agricultural teaching, ag education degrees of some sort. Both of us certified to be ag teachers. So I kind of wanted to dive into that as well a little bit and just touch base before we got into the full personal development thing, but really make some of those connections there. What are some things that in a job like that out on the ranch, whenever you're day in and day out just kind of putting in a ton of hours, you're working really hard, you're out in the heat, it's very strenuous on the body, you had to learn a ton of different things you weren't familiar with, anything from spraying out there to irrigation to working cattle in ways that you hadn't done before that may be a little bit unconventional. What are some takeaways you had from the ranch out there with your experience with Brazos Bend, the internship, and then just in general kind of being around those guys, the cowboy lifestyle, if you will?
Yes, sir. Man, I mean, just from a very general standpoint of it, I guess, a job like that teaches you to be, continue to be pretty disciplined in like your day-to-day life, right? Because, you typically, at least out there, there's stretches of time where you're out there by yourself and you got to be disciplined in the work that you're doing and the quality of work that you're trying to put in, because you're out there by yourself, man. It all comes back on you, so you got to go through and put forth that effort. Some of the bigger takeaways I guess I had, for me, I was around horses a lot more than I was cattle, so it was kind of cool getting to see that cow-calf operation aspect of it and getting to go through and work cattle with y'all and going through and sorting and branding and everything else. So, I really enjoyed that aspect of it. I wasn't a big fan of spraying.
Sure.
I enjoyed the hay work for sure, going through and cutting and raking and everything, but spraying I just wasn't a big fan of, messing with that sprayer.
No, absolutely.
You know exactly what I'm talking about. Going through, you got a big hill coming up and you just turn a little too short, and then that arm just digs right into the hill, and the next thing you know, you got 3 sprayers to fix.
Yeah, 3 spares to fix, and then you get to the end and you realize you're right next to your other tire marks and you didn't go in a straight line, and now you resprayed certain areas and trying to figure out your coverages. It's just, spraying's a whole mess. It'll teach you more lessons, and lessons in self-control and managing your emotions probably more than anything.
Yes, sir. Yeah, absolutely, man.
Yeah, if you throw a wrench 80 yards in the field, then you got to go 80 yards to pick it up. So,
yep,
kind of one of them things.
Teach you some bad habits too. Tell you what, man. Going through and shoot, both of us back then. It was a can a day at Copenhagen for me, and all the tobacco that you did too. So
yeah, a bunch of chewing Levi Garrett. Then on the backside of that, probably, it's an interesting topic to dive into too. Is through this whole development process for me, I've backed off of my drinking exponentially. Back then, whenever we were on the ranch, with the stress, with the day-to-day hard work, just the aches and pain and little things here and there, I'd gotten to where I was drinking probably 2 or 3 beers a night pretty easily.
Pretty easily for both of us, man. I mean, shoot, it's just kind of one of those like stereotypical things where it's like, you bust your ass all day, come home, and you just crack open a cold one and just drink them until bedtime. You know what I mean? So, unfortunately.
Yeah, I know exactly what you mean. And looking back, I mean, at the time it didn't seem like this because it was a culture that was surrounded by that in so many ways. But you don't have to do that, right?
No, not
it's
at all.
more detrimental to my process looking back. And it took me to some places that I didn't want to go to, a mindset I didn't want to have, and then it carried over not just from the alcohol and the drinking, but all that. But it also went into the food and the nutrition. Like I was eating fast food. I was eating crap all the time.
Dairy Queen and tater tot casserole. Boy.
Man. That's
we go through 3 pans of that in a freaking week, dude.
Yeah, you ain't kidding, man. Leftovers all week long. Oh man, those are some crazy times. But yeah, you don't realize what you're doing to yourself back then until one day, like I talked about early. Hell, we had a great conversation yesterday while we were walking. It would have been really cool to turn on the microphones and have recorded that while we were walking around. Anything from health and fitness to Christianity to professional stuff, just across the board. But you don't realize it until that, kind of like I talked about in a previous episode, one of my early episodes called self-hate. You don't realize what you're doing to yourself until you realize how far away you are from the person that you think you are, the standard that you always hold yourself to. And then one day you look in the mirror maybe, or you look back at what you're doing and who you are, and it's not what you think, right?
No, I mean, shoot, kind of like we were talking about yesterday, man, how it's just, we can both mostly, reflect to a certain time or at least a certain moment where you just kind of reflect and you're like, what am I doing here, man? Like, you think that you're at this standard, you think you're, in some cases you think that you might be a little bit better than other people. And then whenever you have that moment of self-realization and reflection, I don't know, your eyes just kind of open up. You're like, oh, shit. I mean, I'm nobody, No,
so. Absolutely. And you realize that in some ways you're further away from the goals that you'd set for yourself and you thought you were going to work towards as you got older. Mm-hmm. And man, that's a good point to dive into a couple questions that I did have. And I know that especially in the past couple of years, kind of like myself, you've really taken a heavy interest and had a lot of drive towards personal development in the areas of your mentality, your physical health, your spiritual health, all those things that we like to talk about here on Next in Line, being the physical, the spiritual, and the mental development. What are some things, let's talk about, let's break each one of them down. The physical side of things, in these past couple of years, whenever you've really taken on that full head of steam towards development, what have you done physically? What has been your progress? What's a daily plan or just a situation around that? What's the mindset for your physical transformation that you're trying to embody?
Man, I mean, kind of like you're talking about, back whenever I was, at the ranch and, even after that when I was ag teaching, it's very easy to get into that complacent lifestyle, right? For me, I was consistently, like I imagine, quite a few others are, you're always that you know what, this upcoming Monday, I'm gonna get into the gym, get after it. That's what I'm gonna change. And overall, like that Monday never comes, right? That or you'll get into it, you're good Monday, you're good Tuesday, and by Wednesday you're like, I'm good. And you just kind of fall off that train, and it's just kind of a repetitive cycle, man. But, kind of like you talked about, I was going home, and I did drink pretty heavily. I was going home and drinking good old Pendleton whiskey quite a bit. And, looking back, whenever you're in those situations, it's hard to see yourself in that exact spot until you have that moment of like self-realization, right? And for me, one day I was just like, what am I doing, man? Like, really, what am I doing? And how did I really let myself get here? I was going through back in high school, just a few years ago now that we're getting up there.
yeah, it didn't seem like that, but yeah, we really are.
Yeah, so, back in high school, I was very athletic. I was a coach's kid, and, I was very competitive in everything that I did. I was a cross-country runner. I lifted a lot, and basketball, and, going to all those small towns, you pretty much play every sport that you can, just because, they're needing people, right?
Absolutely, yeah. Same thing here.
But, after that, going throughout my college years, I went through and working became my main priority. I had to work through school, and if I wasn't working, then I was probably at home hanging out, drinking, with some friends or whoever else. And before I knew it, I was sitting at I think 227 was the highest I ever hit. That's pretty overweight for myself. And recently I went through and completed 75 hard, just like yourself, and that's just a life-changing experience in and of itself, man. I went from 225 down to 191 at the end of phase 1 of Live Hard.
That's awesome, man. 30 pounds.
Yeah, absolutely. And, I haven't quite reached my goal of where I want to be weight-wise, but at the same time, a lot of people put a lot of emphasis on the number, but there's like a certain physique, and I think it's pretty important to reflect on how your body feels too. So, a lot of people, they'll drop a lot of weight and then they're not feeling strong, or if you're lifting too much, then you're feeling sluggish because you got that extra weight. You know what I mean?
No, I do. And I actually, whenever I came off of losing the original like 65, 70 pounds that I lost, it's funny you said that, because whenever I got down to it, I was very, very happy initially with the weight loss and the cut down of size. But then I noticed very quickly, like you said, I wasn't happy with being just a scrawny, skinny guy, because I feel like I had solved one problem and then moved to a new problem with not being happy with being just this little skinny guy. I looked like someone who had lost a bunch of weight.
Yes, sir.
I didn't look like someone who was training and fit and trying to be an athlete.
Yes, sir. Yeah.
So I know exactly where you're coming from with that, man. And
no, absolutely. But
you've gained a ton of muscle. Like you said, you've lost a lot of weight, obviously in the form of body fat. We've had some awesome experiences. We've been able to hit a couple workouts together here and there,
Yes, sir.
spend some time in the gym, and even some runs and stuff. So it's cool to see the progress that you've made through 75 hard. And obviously the physical side, we touched on that pretty significantly. With the diet side, what did you do for your diet during 75 hard? What was the way that you cut down 30 pounds? Because that's kind of a sustainable weight loss in some ways, as compared to over the course of 3 months, I lost 70 pounds. That was pretty, I counted calories and I cut. My goal was to cut and lose weight. You did it in a much healthier way. So walk me through that.
Yeah, man. I mean, my diet, like the food that I ate itself was pretty restrictive, that I allowed myself to eat. But I allowed myself to eat to satiation, right? So like I wasn't counting calories, I wasn't counting protein. I wasn't counting macros, but I was allowed to eat as much as I wanted to due to what I was eating, right? So through 75 hard, for me, I could eat as much meat as I wanted. whether that's red meat, chicken. I eat a crap ton of tuna just because cheap protein, man.
Man, tuna. If you ever look at it, y'all listening out there, if you ever look at the macros on tuna, it is just straight protein.
Yeah, no, absolutely. It's a absolute lifesaver is what it really comes down to.
No, I love it. Like tuna steaks, they're reasonably cheap at HEB or whatever grocery store you go to. But yeah, tuna.
Shoot, I mean, dude, even for me, tuna packets, man. I don't think my coworkers probably liked it too much, but I mean,
sure, yeah, yeah.
But I mean, yeah, man. So I was going through. I could eat as much meat as I wanted. I could have leafy vegetables.
Mm-hmm.
I couldn't have anything grown in the ground though. So essentially no starches really.
Okay, so like potatoes.
So yeah, no potatoes. No carrots, nothing like that. I couldn't have no fruit. That was another one. Cut out a lot of that sugar, even though.
Where'd you get most of your carbs from?
Dude, it was minimally carb diet.
So
really.
you went really low.
Yeah, it was just like no carb cycling whatsoever. I just went through just meat and leafy vegetables, and Kendall was not a fan.
Yeah, no, absolutely. I understand that for sure. I mean, as we know, we like kind of the mindset that people get into before they start dieting. A lot of people find themselves in is carbs is what tastes good, right?
Absolutely.
And
yeah.
In a lot of ways, yes, some of it has some really good taste to it, but the side effects of carbs on a regular basis is tough to constitute in my mind because it's so negative for your body in a lot of ways. Now, you do need some, and healthy ones are good for you, but
yes, sir. No, I mean, dude, for me, like I could go through and eat the same thing day in and day out.
I can too.
For me, like breakfast was usually it's gonna be your low fat Greek yogurt, just plain Greek yogurt. I was allowed to have berries though, so I threw in some raspberries, blueberries, and blackberries.
Okay.
And then I'd sweeten that with some just natural honey, and then some chia seeds is what my breakfast was for. I mean, about 3-4 months. So
I could dig
day
that.
in and day out. Obviously, if I had some extra time, I'd go ahead and go through and make some eggs, just to get the extra protein in. Other than that, man, I mean, a lot of chicken. It's just your stereotypical stuff. A lot of broccoli. I mean, that's pretty much it. So, and I mean, for me, because I can go through and eat the same thing day in, day out, that made my lifestyle very easy because I knew what I was going to have for breakfast. I knew what I was going to have for lunch. And, I mean, obviously for dinner, I'd go through and change it up a couple times a week.
Yeah.
Which is good. I mean, obviously I don't want to eat the same thing for 90 days straight, but if need be, I could. But I mean, allow that variety, and for snacks, I'd go through and I'd have some mixed nuts from HEB, just no peanuts were allowed, and due to that higher fat content inside of peanuts. But
I got you.
Yeah, man. I mean, I really enjoyed it. I mean, that's just what worked for me. Allowed me to lose fat and build muscle. I was lifting pretty heavily, and throughout 75 hard, I was lifting heavily, and in the evenings, I was going through and doing a lot of kind of tempo runs and stuff like that. But for phase one is when I introduced a lot more cardio based stuff, and being on that diet then too really helped me lean out quite a bit. So that's cool.
That's awesome.
And I don't know. I think the cool thing about that diet, which now that you're on paleo, we can kind of see some similarities between the two. Not having those carbs really helps me. I didn't have those afternoon crashes, and dude, it didn't matter how much I ate. Like I was literally never bloated. And it was amazing.
Yes.
It was freaking amazing.
Yes, that's worth so much, and it also that's one of the things that it makes you feel better. And whenever you feel better not being bloated, and you don't have that kind of your gut hanging over your waistband kind of thing,
you're like, damn, I gotta move my belt one freaking leap, and
yeah, no, exactly. Like I gotta unbutton my pants and just sit here for a little while. Yeah, no, you don't have to deal with that, and it helps boost your confidence in some ways too, man.
Yes, sir.
You feel like a whole new person, and that's that's one thing I wanted to go into because we touched on the physical side, we touched on the diet, but the other huge factor and probably the most important thing surrounding programs like 75 Hard or just a personal development journey in general is the shift in mentality and just
Yes, sir.
your whole mindset, right? In my opinion. So do you have some of the mindset and mentality things you can walk us through as far as what changed for you and the way you approached anything in your life?
Man, really, 75 Hard attracted me due to the discipline that was needed for it, right?
Yep.
Because you got to go through consistently, you got to go through day in and day out. And if you're doing it right, you should be giving 110% day in, day out. If you're not doing that, I don't think that you're going to get the full experience, and you're not going to grab every lesson that you can from it. So that even means like if you went through and did your 2 workouts and you could reflect on one of those, and you're like, I didn't put out my all on that one. That means you get your ass back out there and you go do it again.
Absolutely. No, so, I had days like that, and that's a great point. And on the other side, with kind of the dichotomy of that, I would say as well that if you're putting in 100%, 10% in everything you do. So
yes, sir.
If it's an active recovery day, you need to make sure you are present and actually still working out and working hard for that active recovery, but you're staying engaged and making sure, hey, I got to take this time so that my body can recover properly and I can do things appropriately.
Yes, sir.
Because 75 Hard and all these things are scalable in order to make it sustainable for you.
Yes, sir. Yeah. No, I completely agree, man. Towards the end of it, with how much running and lifting and everything that you're doing, like I'd have days where my hips were just super, super tight.
Yeah, for
and
sure.
So for those days, I'd go through and I'd go hit like a 30-minute run, and then I'd make sure that I was actively stretching out my hips and my calves and everything else. And hip flexors were always kind of issue for me too, and just going through. But like you said, you have to 100% be completely focused in that environment. Like, I'm not going to be out there stretching, browsing through Facebook and counting those 15 minutes, whatever it is. You know what I mean?
Yeah, you're intentional with everything you're doing.
Yeah, exactly, intentional. So, but yeah, no, 75 Hard for me, and seeing the awesome transformation that I had on your life. And for me, I always thought that I was a very disciplined individual if I had to be, right? But the issue is that people tend to not force themselves into those situations, right? So it's always like, oh, yeah, I'm a fighter, but you're not going to know how you're going to fight unless you put yourself in that situation. So you always have some type of idea or plan that you think. And for me, I wanted 75 Hard to prove to myself that I could be as disciplined and committed as I thought I could be.
So that's a great point. And let's be dead honest here. That's why I dive into ultra running and some of these really hard and competitive things, because why I might be crazy out here running all these marathons and stuff like that. I do appreciate all y'all's support, because guys, Lane, his fiance, and then of course my wife, Lane, have all been extremely supportive. They've helped us out, especially on these longer runs, giving us a place to stay. They've happened to be close to Houston. All these races have, so giving us a place to stay, and then helped crew, even offered to pace for this upcoming race in the 100. So I'm super excited about that. But it's what I was getting at with the point of bringing up ultra running was not just to talk about one of my favorite hobbies, but it was to talk about. It's finding my end point, right? It's finding to where I break. It's pushing myself to a whole new level of mental toughness, and that's my goal. I finally found something that does test me and my mental capacity and what I'm fortified to actually handle, and tests my mettle whenever I actually prepare for something.
Well, and I think also the great thing about ultra running, which is something that I find attractive with ultra running. I'm not a ultra runner myself, but I aspire to be one day. But through a lot of people talking about it and seeing all the experiences that puts you through too, is that a 100-mile race or a 60-mile race or 100K or 50K or whatever it is, those experiences teach you how you are in tough situations, You are subjectively putting yourself in those scenarios. And I mean, you're actually going out and striving to figure out who you are and what that breaking point is. And a lot of people, they have a unrealistic idea of who they are, just as we did, back in the day. And here we are striving to figure out who we are and where our breaking points are. And I mean, if I had to guess, a 100-mile race is going to kind of be like a journey of life for you. You're going to have your ups and downs, and at the end of it, I mean, you got to give it your all, and you're going to find out who you are, man. So.
And that's what it's all about to me, and I completely agree with you. I think that's exactly what it is, and that's what I'm looking for. I mean, I've got some aspirations to do some crazy things in this life, and I want to see if I'm up for it, man. See if I can achieve these things, if I can push myself to do all these wild and crazy things. And I know you're doing a lot of the same, man. We've taken on some things as well. Nothing crazy extreme as a ultra marathon, but things that we wouldn't have been able to do before we started this journey. Like I know, for instance, we had a Tough Mudder not too long ago that we went and did in College Station.
We did, man. That was a good time.
That was a good time. We went and ran over there. We did the 5K. We probably could have knocked out the 10K. I think we'll probably get one done here pretty soon anyway.
Absolutely. Yep.
But man, I think there were some great experiences that came off of that too, because there were some really challenging things and some different situations we found ourselves in.
Well, and what I loved about that Tough Mudder is that's ran as a team. And in those team environments, I love the leadership opportunities that it presents and provides to those that want to be in that situation, I guess.
Absolutely.
Whether it's going through and helping somebody over the obstacles or helping each other, get over a wall or going up that rope climb or whatever it was, man. I mean, just going out there and either physically helping or going through and mentally, like, dude, just keep after it, keep going. We're going to get to that next obstacle, and we're going to continue knocking it out, I mean, it's a good time, man. I really enjoyed it.
Absolutely. And like you said, leadership, man, I saw you at the front helping check and make sure that guys were still good, that were off pace or that were struggling a little bit, making sure everyone took their time to get over the obstacles and everybody was staying together as a team. And I know there's some great things that come out of that. Like you said, putting yourself in situations to be a leader and have the opportunity to experience leadership situations, I think that's a huge part of a personal development journey as well. Yeah,
for sure. And I mean, shoot, me and you both throughout different areas of that race, we dropped back and we were making sure the person running in last in our team was sticking with everybody else and, just trying to help push them and make sure that, they're doing all right and, just progressing. So
that's a huge part of it.
Just leading from the back, man.
Exactly. And sometimes that's what you got to do, right?
Absolutely.
I mean, you find yourself in different situations, and it's not always the cookie cutter guy up in front barking the orders that makes a difference in the leadership. Sometimes you got to get out there and you got to grind and you got to be with those guys and you got to show them, if nothing else, if you're not there to encourage them, because sometimes encouragement doesn't work. Sometimes the words don't mean anything, but the presence is what matters.
Yeah, exactly. Or the example. Right.
Absolutely.
And I mean, shoot, whenever you got a teammate that's running out ahead of you, that for me and I'm sure for others too, it kind of motivates you. Like, hey, like they're busting ass, I need to make sure I'm doing the same. Because it's a team event and as a team goal that we had to go through and knock it out as fast as we could. And I mean, dude, we had a good time with it.
No, it was a real good time. And man, it kind of leads into a different conversation I wanted to have too. Something that's both interesting to both you and I, as we've talked about it several times before, but to be very successful in those obstacle course style races, and then coming off of your 75 hard with leaning out a little bit, but still maintaining strength, but working on endurance, and your interest in becoming an ultra runner. I don't imagine you want to be this scrawny little ultra runner that goes out and just runs these 17-hour, 100-mile races or whatnot, but you're probably leaning more towards what most people call a hybrid athlete.
Exactly.
And man, I think that's pretty much a newer term that was coined not too long ago, being a hybrid athlete. We see it with Cam Hanes, Goggins, a lot of guys like that.
Dude.
Nick Bear's a monster.
Coming after you, man.
Yeah. Nick Bear's crazy, man. He's a perfect example of a hybrid athlete. Somebody who's still very capable and strong, but is able to run these endurance races and do
Yep.
kind of a variety of things. It makes you, in some ways, the ultimate apex predator.
Yeah, man. I mean, I think that there's a bunch of attractive aspects of it, to myself at least, of being a hybrid, right? Because for me, once I started lifting whenever I was a little bit younger, I always thoroughly enjoyed that aspect of it. But, as we were kind of talking about last night, going through and running, it can be very meditative, and it's a very easy way to go through and push yourself and figure out who you are. Because it's one thing to it's one thing to like bench to failure, right? But that doesn't have the same impact as going out and running, a marathon for your first time, or a 50K or 100 miles. Like that's nowhere near the same impact. Like one, in one sense, is kind of like stress relief, I guess you could say, which would be that bench, right?
Sure.
But going through and running 100 miles is completely they're not even comparable in my opinion. So I don't know. I like both aspects of both lifting and running, and a lot of people. I mean, I talked to quite a few members at my gym, and I've talked to some of them about my goals. And whenever they hear bodybuilding or powerlifting or lifting in general and running ultras, they always just kind of get a surprised, shocked look on their face. So
it's kind of crazy. Yeah, no, I'm with you. I'm a smaller guy. I'm not as strong as I could be because I focus more on the cardio.
So where are you sitting at right now?
Sitting weight-wise, I actually weigh about 170.
About 170 right now?
Being right at 6 foot tall, so that's kind of smaller.
Dang it, boy.
Yeah.
No.
Withering away, yeah.
Yeah, but I mean, dude, you're freaking cut. I tell you what, man. Whenever we're
appreciate it.
Working out at the gym, seeing striations whenever you're over there, working on them dumbbells, is like, dude's getting in the gym.
Man, so. we're trying to. It's all the roids, right?
Absolutely.
No, I'm joking. I don't take steroids. Thank you very much. I don't even look like it. But no, it's cool to see, and I'm trying to strive for that same kind of hybrid athlete because I think it makes you so much more just
well-rounded, in my opinion.
Yeah, you're versatile in not only in athleticism and competition that we have, but everyday competition, like the game of life. It makes you more capable. If somebody says, hey, do you want to go out and take a long hike and go camping this weekend, you can just pick them and go.
Yeah. I mean, I think a good way to put it is just you're more prepared just in general, overall, in a bunch of different aspects.
I agree. No, and we've talked about several things. We talked about hunting trips. We've talked about river trips, different things. And those are –
Yep, beach trips, going down pins, a few miles. I mean, I don't know. It just comes down to being prepared, and I think, for me personally, I mean, there's nothing wrong with runners, just leaning out as much as they can so that they can be as fast as they can,
Sure.
But that's just not what I have in mind for myself, I guess.
It all has to do with your goals.
Yeah, absolutely. And I mean, that's what it comes back to, is just like you got to find out who you are and who you want to be, and just strive to reach that potential that you have. So,
no, I completely agree with you, man. And dude, I know we've had a pretty good long conversation here. We've been sitting, bouncing some stuff back and forth. We've covered several different things. As far as your personal development journey, we talked about wanting to run some long endurance races. We talked about getting married here next year.
Yes, sir.
But, man, one question I always ask people whenever I sit down and talk to them, especially since I started this podcast and this movement, what is next in line for Lane Divin? What's on the table for you, man? What's your big goal? I know you've talked about a few things, but
man, what's next in line for me? I mean, I think with that we both have quite a few goals set ahead of us. I could run in any direction. Professionally, I just got promoted within the company that I work for.
Congratulations.
And yes, sir, I appreciate that. I have some high aspirations within that company. There's some big goals I want to try and reach there, and there's a big impact that I want to make on the people that I'm working with over there. I also want to get some of my own businesses going. I want to get some different investments going, And, for me physically, just kind of like you said, I'm kind of trying to become kind of a hybrid athlete, right? I want to continue lifting. I think that I got to kind of adjust my schedule just a little bit. I've been focusing a little bit more on bodybuilding type lifts. I think I'm going to transition into more powerlifting type lifts because that will allow me to still maintain muscle, but it's a little bit more, I guess you could say, I wouldn't say useful because, muscle is muscle, right? You're able to use it either way.
Sure.
But I don't know. I'm going to kind of transition into that powerlifting standpoint so that I can maintain strength for my size is what I'm trying to say, I guess, while still leaning out a little bit more and start getting into those deeper runs. So
sure, man.
So I don't know, man. I've been looking at some of Trail Racing Over Texas's race. They got that night race coming up.
Pernelle Falls or something?
Yeah, that Possum. I can't think of the name of it right now.
Possum's Revenge or something.
Possum's
like that.
Revenge. Yeah. And that's over there. I think right outside of Sealy. And so that should be a good time. That's just something I'm looking at, and just trying to continue progressing and moving forward. So,
man, I think that's a perfect answer. You thinking 50K? You thinking?
Dude, I don't know, man. May I'll just go straight for the 100.
Man, come on. I'll help you. I'm not this accomplished person, but man, I've done some research, so I'm down.
Man. We'll see what the good Lord has in store for me.
Absolutely, brother. And man, I know we've covered a lot, and we could sit here and talk for hours and hours, I'm sure, with these microphones in front of us. But probably the last question that I've got for you as we sit here tonight, brother, is what is something that you wish you would have known before you started this entire journey with personal development?
Something that I wish I would have known, man.
Something you wish somebody would have told you, or something that was you expected one outcome and it came out different.
Dude, just freaking start.
Yeah.
Just freaking start. Just get after it, man. Quit with the BS excuses and just set a goal, at least set a freaking direction, and just start pushing towards it, man. In today's age, we have access to so much information out there in whatever it is that you're trying to progress in, right? And sometimes it can kind of get overwhelming, but just freaking start. Like you'll figure out the details as you get along, and that's something that I wish I would have just realized more than anything else, is that like once you get going, once you get that momentum moving, I think that's the difficult part, is just getting that momentum going. It's a heck of a lot easier just maintaining that or continuing to improve that momentum. Yeah, dude, just freaking start.
Absolutely, man. I could not agree more. Like the times I wasted planning out, making sure I had everything perfect in line before I dove into a process like that. I said this before, but I'll say it again. Process improvement is only process improvement while it's improving the process, right? At some point, you got to dive in and you got to become part of the plan that you're setting for yourself, because I think so many of us fall victim to planning and over planning again, and never, like you said, just starting.
Yeah, no, you're just always like, oh, well, man, it is it's Thursday. I'll just start Sunday, or I'll start Monday, or I'll start. No, dude, like just set a direction and start tomorrow. Better yet, start right now. Why not?
And just go.
Just freaking go with it, man. Just run with it. Keep getting after it, and I promise, there's going to be days where you don't want to do it. And I'll tell you right now, those are the days that you have to push the hardest, because those are also the days that you'll get the most out of it.
Yeah. No, looking back at the end of the day, you reflect, and it's boom.
Yes, sir. Absolutely.
That's the day that mattered.
Just collectively, just what it is, man. Just keep going, and you'll get there. So.
Absolutely, man. Well, I greatly appreciate you stopping in, joining us, letting me crash here and hang up the flag on the wall.
Yes, sir. Always.
For the Next in Line podcast here. And I wish you good luck with your future endeavors, sir. Guys, thanks for tuning into this episode of the Next in Line podcast. That was an awesome conversation we just had with the one and only Lane Divin here in Richmond, Texas. I hope y'all got as much value out of that as I did from the conversation that we were able to have. Guys, make sure you're checking us out on social media. That's at Next in Line on Facebook, Instagram, and TikTok. Make sure you're liking, subscribing, commenting, sharing the show with like-minded individuals, and helping us grow this movement and move it in a positive direction. Also, if you've got people that you think might be a good fit for the Next in Line podcast, shoot us a DM or an email and let us know who we should have on the podcast next. Guys, thanks for tuning in, and always be prepared for whatever is next in line.